Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to our panel today. Entertainment expands the digital home, networking, sharing, and protecting, where we're certain to have a lot more fun than you could possibly have out on the beach just a block away. Learn a lot more, too. My name is Ross Rubin. I am Director of Industry Analysis at the NPD Group. NPD is a market research firm. We are best known for tracking sales of many different kinds of products, but my group tracks consumer technology. So everything from iPods to plasma televisions to digital cameras and in between. And one of my focus areas for the year is really looking at usage of different kinds of products as we start to see each of the three screens that consumers interact with on a daily basis, the PC, television, and cell phone or other mobile device, really start to become multifunction devices capable of displaying or presenting a rich variety of media. What does that mean in terms of the relationships among these products? Do they complement each other? Do they compete with each other? And how does the consumer use them? So I'm very excited to introduce our panel. The way it's going to work is that each speaker will spend a few minutes introducing himself, his company, and what their view is on the state of the digital home at this point. And then we will switch to a roundtable format where I will throw out some questions and also field some questions from the audience as we get closer to the end of the panel. So the first speaker is Brian Pekaroff, I apologize. You just told me to. Brian Pekaroff, he is Vice President of Marketing for Magnum Semiconductor.
Okay, thank you, Ross. Magnum is a chip company, so a little unusual to be a digital Hollywood. What we do is we enable people who buy our chips to play, record, and manage various kinds of digital content. Could be video, could be audio, could be photographs. We're found not only in video recorders like DVD recorders, where we got our start, but now increasingly we're finding our way to lots of other kinds of devices, sometimes even digital TVs. In fact, LG just put out a box that has the PVR function built inside. So what you're finding is that the sort of great abilities that PVR functions bring you, like being able to pause or record large amounts of content, are actually finding their way not just in the boxes in the living room, but also into the TVs, and soon lots of other kinds of products. Our goal with this effort is to actually make the consumer electronic products like video recorders and PVRs actually equal citizens on a home network. And actually we're starting to do that in our platforms now, so you can actually add Ethernet or wireless capability and do really creative things, like record broadcast from your cable or your satellite and then stream it around your home network. You could get a program guide from the internet. You could download DivX files off the internet and play them on your big screen TV. And it's been interesting at this conference to see just how many new content providers would like to get into that model. So we hope to be able to support that. And just previously in this, we had a big discussion about digital rights management. So there's a lot of really new, interesting subjects that are going along with this progress for consumer products to actually go onto a home network. So that's the big news. We think that if you expand a video recorder in this way to add the networking, it's better than a PC. It's easier to use, it's quieter, it's cheaper. It's better than a set-top box because now you've got a DVD archiving mechanism in there, and so your hard drive doesn't have to always be full. It's also available in retail, so you don't have to wait for Comcast or Charter or somebody like that to roll the service out. You can just go down to the store and buy it. Finally, there's a really new class of a really interesting new class of products like the Slingbox. Well, they're great. They give you the sort of place shifting ability, but yet again, you find yourself wanting a number of things as a critical mass inside that box. You want to be able to store it, that's true. You want to be able to record and play back, but you also want to be able to share. And you need to archive it because, like any hard drive, it's always going to be full. So that's why Magnum takes the approach we do. And we're here at Digital Hollywood looking for all kinds of different ways to expand that business and provide a new foundation for great new functions for consumer products.
Thanks very much, Brian. I had a quick follow-up. What sort of time frame are you looking at for some of this nifty home networking functionality? Because it strikes me that a lot of the cable companies aren't jumping over each other to enable a lot of this fluidity of media in the home.
I'll give you a little anecdote. In 2001, we rolled out a way to use our chip products in the streaming with home phone line network access. And everybody at CES said, gee, that's interesting, and nobody bought it. In 2002, we rolled it out on wireless networks, and everybody said, gee, that's interesting, and nobody bought it. Then we started doing MPEG-4 over wireless, 2 channels at once, and doing all this other great stuff, and everybody said, I didn't think you could do that, and nobody bought it. We're here in 2006, going into 2007. The broadband penetration is over 50% in the US, and it's way higher lots of other places. You've got home networks now in at least a third of the US homes. Maybe it's finally time for this stuff to actually start to take off and we'd be able to make money at it. And furthermore, the technology has come a long, long way. It's kind of like the difference between DOS 2 and Windows XP. So we're getting more and more.
It crashes more?
I'm sorry?
It crashes more now?
Well, yeah. Well, that's perhaps the price of progress. But we've come a long way, and I think actually this 2007 could actually be the year where you start to see some really interesting networked video products and audio products start to happen.
Okay, thanks very much. Our next speaker is Peter B. Kars, Director of Business Development at Philips Consumer Electronics.
You can just say Peter Kars, that's enough. We don't need to be. I'm the Director of Business Development for Philips Consumer Electronics. I'm working on what I call the crossroads between media and technology. I'm based in the US, in the Bay Area. So Silicon Valley, as well as Hollywood, is my territory. It's interesting talking about the home network, or the digital home, which I typically translate into a home network. We have been experimenting with home networking devices for quite some time. You may remember our Streamium internet radio, which was basically an ordinary boombox with an FM radio built in and a CD player, and it had 2 speakers on the side. But it had also the capability to directly hook up to the internet and stream internet radio stations, as well as the content from your PC to that box. We went on to introduce a Wi-Fi home theater system. We also had an LCD television with Wi-Fi capability built in. And the philosophy of those products basically was that to explain what a home networking is a very hard sell. So you better use a product that has a very clear primary function. A boombox, well, it plays music. That's obvious. And then, well, where the music comes from, there's some innovation. It came from the internet, or it came from the network. The trouble we ran into, though, is that these products are not that easy to set up. So either people brought them back, or they generated huge service calls, and so it was a huge challenge to get those things into the market. What we later tried, there's some feedback on the microphone, please. Later we went on to thank you, put them in, put a client and a server into one box and have a bundled product, still wirelessly connected. So you could have one station in the living room and use the other station in the bedroom, and that scores better. It's a much simpler prospect. There's no setup whatsoever. You just power it up and then it works. Trouble though is then we basically created a wireless point-to-point connection, and so you want to make the next step, which is connect other devices to that same equation. You also want to connect it to the PC in some scenarios, and so basically we're back at the problem of setup. And so that's why we are very active in organizations like DLNA, the Digital Living Network Alliance. Last time we had to explain who that actually was, but I think by now basically everybody should know what it is. Otherwise, look it up, dlna.org. But basically what that does is we write guidelines based on existing standards. We're not trying to come up with all kinds of new technologies. Basically, exploiting existing technologies, but write the guidelines so that you get a truly interoperable setup. If you would make, say, an MPEG-2 device, and I would make an MPEG-2 device, and we don't speak to each other, the chance that those devices actually can talk to each other is not that big, because there is so much stuff in such a standard. DLNA has released 2 versions of its guidelines already, and there are hundreds of pages to explain to you how to use existing standards in such a way that we can actually guarantee that the devices will be interoperable. So that's a very important important thing to do. And by the way, I am the chairman of the Content Protection Subcommittee in DLNA. Another thing that we're very actively involved in, that is the Coral Consortium. And the Coral Consortium is about interoperability as well, but specifically focused at the interoperability of content-protected content. So you could call it DRM interoperability. And the goal of Coral is to establish standards that allow content coming from any source to be playable on any device without the consumer being aware of where the content came from. And one particular concept in those standards I want to point out is the authorized domain. The idea of an authorized domain is that you have a minimal layer of interoperability overhead that allows the box to, or any device, to represent its membership into a domain, and if the interoperability layer recognizes that the content has been authorized for that domain, then it can play on any device that is in that domain. So that's a very consumer-friendly way of allowing content to go from one box to the other. So basically, interoperability, I think, is a key factor, a key success factor for home networking to really take off, and that's why Philips is very actively working in that area.
Thanks, Peter. Our next speaker is Richard Bullwinkle, VP of Products at Mediabolic.
Hi. I'm going to keep it short. There may be more of us than you before we're done. We are a small company in the Silicon Valley who do much of the things that you've already heard described. We build technology and middleware and also fully developed products for sharing your media around the home, whether that be personal media, media of your photos off your camera, or music that you ripped off your CD player or off CDs, or whether that be what I call, DRM media, or premium media, which is media that you've somehow paid for. It's got a lock and key on it, and you've got to figure out how to play it on something other than the device you purchased it on. We are also a member of DLNA. There are lots of standards that we support for getting that media around. I'd say in general, I will take the anti-DRM standpoint in most good arguments. I still believe it's not easy enough for consumers, and I spend a lot of time trying to make devices where consumers don't have to know if they have a right to play it or not. It just, should just work. But that's pretty much the gist of it. We build DMAs, which are digital media adapters, which kind of are an everything box. They'll play photos, music, and video. We build photo shoe boxes. These are like it used to be when there was a fire in your home, you'd run inside and grab the wedding pictures and run. Now you grab this box where all your digital pictures are stored, and they can be viewed on your TV or streamed around your network, or on little digital Philips photo frames, or we're a partner of Philips, so. And then we also build digital audio players, and these can take a lot of different shapes. They can be a clock radio next to your bed where you wake up to your MP3s, or you wake up to internet radio. They can stream your iPod from one room to the other. They can do all sorts of cool things, most of them legal. So we cover a lot with the same technology. We cover a lot of different product categories. I'd like to say we're a technology shop where we write the code once and license it, and lots of people buy it. As it turns out, as this market is growing very rapidly right now, we're building a whole lot of end-to-end, fully developed products, which means we do the UI and we do the board layout and all sorts of things like that. So we have a lot more experience in that part than we'd like to. But anyway, that's who we are, and that's it.
Okay, Richard, I wanted to follow up with you on something Peter said, which is that In order to build this market, their Philips experience has been that you need to integrate into devices that consumers are already recognizing, sort of staples in the home. And how does that angle compare to some of these newer types of specialized products that you just mentioned, things like the photo shoebox? Where do you sort of see different kinds of consumers getting the value proposition there? Either of you can feel free to respond.
I would say that's certainly been true in the past, where if we put a DVD loader on the front of a DMA, people at least knew what part of Fry's or a Circuit City that ought to go in. And if you just had no loader and just played digital media across the network, people had no idea what it was or where it went. That's no longer so much the case. For example, people like Sony and Canon and people who have recently left the film business and are now strictly in digital photos, they are realizing that there is a problem. People don't know what do I do with these photos? I have thousands of them. How do I sort them? How do I view them somewhere other than on my small laptop with my family? I want to view them in I used to have a photo album on the living room, the living room table, and you'd share it with your family gathered around. Now we can share them on the TV and things like that. So I think the need is becoming more clear to consumers. I think people have tons of digital music on their computer, and they want to wake up to it. So they understand, clock radio that plays my digital music, I get it. So I agree with the concept that you proposed, that once we did have to kind of put them in other sort of, other kinds of devices to convince customers to buy them. I was very early at TiVo, and I spent a lot of time explaining to people what the hell TiVo was. I was TiVo's chief evangelist. And so for the first year and a half of that, people looked at you like, oh, you mean it's a VCR? And then you'd say, no, it's all digital, and you don't have to get up and you don't record over your daughter's wedding when you put the tape in. And they'd say, oh, so it's black magic. So eventually, I think I can say the word TiVo in most cases now, except to my mother, and people kind of know what it is. So it's we're getting there with digital media. People get it, and so I think the Trojan horse approach to devices is no longer quite so relevant. Although it's becoming so popular, sorry for going on too long, that as Peter mentioned, we do put them in TVs now, because why not just have your TV be your DMA? Why not just stream straight to your TV? Why do you need a box? Why not just have your clock radio be your digital media player? It's kind of a Trojan horse, but it's really just a more powerful clock radio.
Okay. Our next speaker is Brian Hofstadter, Director of Marketing Connected Entertainment at Zorin.
Thank you, Ross. Many of you have probably heard of Zoran, or more likely not heard of Zoran. We're in most of your homes, in the TVs, in the DVD players, DVD recorders, in your digital cameras, in your smartphones. We make all of these products, and as Richard introed pretty much the concept for me, we're driving the connectivity solutions that are standards-based into those products today to allow you to connect them to each other, to be able to use your digital camera to show your pictures directly on your HD TV set wirelessly, to be able to use the HDMI connectivity to do it in high definition, also to be able to print directly from your TV when you want a photo to be printed out, to be able to share those photos with your family members between the various devices in your home and their home. All of these types of solutions are now being driven into the everyday devices that you have available in a consumer electronics list of products. I think that's pretty much covers it.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is Brett Morrill, Chief Technology Officer at Pure Networks.
Hi, we're a company based up in the Seattle area called Pure Networks. We're a tiny little company, and as you might imagine, being based up in Seattle, we're a high density of ex-Microsoft employees who are really trying to repent on sins and do something a little different in the world and make a difference in the space of home networking. So we built a product called Network Magic. It's a software product that gets installed on PCs in the home, and really helps bring home networking to the average end user that doesn't have a PhD in networking. We like to say, we have a term that we use a lot when we think about our target end user, and that is Maslow's hierarchy of home networking. And for those of you not familiar with Maslow, he was a psychologist, I think, or a philosopher. I think he was a psychologist, who proposed sort of a pyramid of human needs. And at the very bottom of the pyramid, and the idea of the pyramid is that you can't move up the next tier of the pyramid until you satisfy the tier before it. And the very bottom tier of the pyramid is the human need to breathe oxygen. And if you can't breathe, then you're not really worried about the fact that you're incredibly thirsty right now. You're worried about where your next breath of air is going to come from, and so forth. And if you're dying of thirst, you're not worried about eating. And once you've got your basic needs met, you can breathe, you can drink, you can eat. Then you can move on and worry about things as shelter, human interaction, love, and all those great deep psychological conversations you have at night.
And movies.
And movies, of course. So, the same principles really apply in the home networking space. And when you look at the average consumer in the home, they go through this fundamental primary need, which is to get connected to the internet and to be able to stay connected to the internet. And it's a very frustrating experience for most users. Once they have that need met, then they worry about, maybe I can bring another PC into the home and I can get that second PC connected to the internet. And they go through that evolution. Once they've got multiple PCs in the home, they worry about, wouldn't it be great if I could print to that one printer from all these PCs? Wouldn't it be great if I could move a file from this PC to another PC? And then, finally they bring in TiVos and other more advanced equipment. So, the digital home for me is towards the top of that pyramid. Unfortunately, the way it stands today, I think it's an incredible vision, and it's one we believe in very passionately at Pure Networks. But there's a lot of potholes on the way to get to that vision. The unfortunate reality, I would say, of the digital home today is that it is fraught with incidents where users are going down to the basement to reboot their routers every couple of days because they can't keep them connected to the internet. They're perplexed by terminology such as enter your MAC address when they don't even own a Macintosh and they don't know what that means. They're told by, I'm going to pick on Richard for a minute here, they're told by TiVo's brilliance to come along and enter their 128-bit hexadecimal key into their TiVo so they can now get it wirelessly secured on their network. And I still, I'm the CTO and I'm still not sure I entirely understand what 128-bit hexadecimal key is, so there's not much hope for my mom there. So, in closing, I'd say, to sort of ground the panel when we go through our discussion today, I'd remind the panel that, we're not dealing with tens of millions of users out there that have a DVR, despite Rich's best efforts. They're sitting there with a TiVo, and the challenge is where do I get content to put on this thing and how do I play it? But we're dealing with tens of millions of people that still have a VCR and the clock is still blinking on the front because it was too complicated to set up. So there's a lot of holes in the digital home and the industry that the industry needs to fill in order to fulfill this vision.
Can I get the NPD guy to back me up? There are tens of millions of DVRs on
Yes,
here.
most of them not sold at retail, but
no TVs.
Yeah, right.
The last speaker on the panel is Billy McNair, co-founder and CEO of PureFlix.
Thanks, Ross. I think I'm partly on the panel to provide a contrarian viewpoint. While most of these gentlemen are doing the best to bring digital into your home, we have a service that lets you trade physical DVDs. So given that it's late in the day and you've sat through a lot of these conferences and to try to keep everybody awake, I'm going to ask for a little bit of an interactive portion. Just by a quick show of hands, how many people think that greater than 50% of music today is sold in the digital format?
Sold
Sold.
or acquired?
Sold.
Digital, including CDs.
Digital, including MP3s, not including CDs. So we got a couple. How many people think it's greater than 25%? Okay, a couple more. In fact, it's about 10 or 15%. So if I ask the same question, how many of you own an iPod or a MP3 player? Pretty much the whole room, right? So my point with that is just to illustrate that we're about 5 years since the introduction of the iPod, which is, I think, most of us would agree has been one of the most phenomenally successful consumer electronic devices ever. Almost all of us have that or its equivalent, but yet a very, very small fraction of music is actually sold digitally. So I think part of why I'm here is again to provide that contrarian viewpoint of the here and today of where the consumer market is and will continue to be for probably the next at least 5 years is in the physical space. With that little kind of example of music, that's music, where the file sizes are much, much smaller than they are on the movie side. The bandwidth issues aren't as big a concern. You're happy to listen to the music on your iPod on a plane. You don't have the issue of trying to get it, how do I get this from my PC to my television? Which again, most of the people on the panel here are trying to address that issue for consumers in one way or another. But what we do at PureFlix is basically let people leverage the 6 billion DVDs that are laying around US households and be able to take the DVDs they have, laying on their shelves, collecting dust, and use those DVDs to get the movies they really want to watch. We charge 99 cents a trade. We now have more DVDs available for trade on our network than eBay. So we see ourselves as the largest online marketplace for DVDs, and believe that this is where the market will be for years to come. Digital is coming, it's inevitable, but last time I checked, 39 cents to deliver a movie file was a pretty inexpensive price point.
Okay, so this is a really interesting mix in that we've got a couple of people who are really, whose businesses are grounded in the practicalities of where consumer media distribution is today and the challenges around moving it around the home. We've got a few people building products that are getting out on the market today. We've got a few chip guys who are helping to build the businesses of tomorrow and products of tomorrow. So my first question out to the panel is why aren't we seeing more of this media sharing in the home? Is it that there's lack of consumer demand or understanding? Is it the price points of the products that are out there, confusion around the functionality? Is it the difficulty of setup? Is it that the speeds of the networks aren't fast enough? And if so, will that be changing soon? So if anyone would like to sort of give me their sense of what the priorities are there in terms of jump-starting this functionality, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll jump in for that one, Ross.
Okay.
You got it all right. All of those reasons are why it's going slowly. But one of the points, at least from an IC company like Zoran's point of view, is that the volume of actual users, the demand, if you will, has to meet a level that also is commensurate with what it takes to make an integrated circuit at that volume. It's about $20 or $30 million investment just for a single product, a digital camera, for example, and then we don't recreate that product every time we make it for the next few years. We actually do generational improvements over in an evolutionary way. So what's happened now is that the demand curve, the convergence that we were all waiting for, was more convergence of demand with price points than it was convergence of TV with computers. The demand is now finally getting to the point where companies like ours can make investments with a reasonably good chance that there's going to be a volume there to take that product. Everybody would like to have a connected digital camera that automatically showed pictures on their HD TV set, but they had to buy an HD TV set before they knew they wanted that, which goes back to the Maslow's triangle concept, I think.
I think it's also because what is a home network? I mean, you need to have something that transmits, you have to have something that receives, and maybe something in the middle that takes care of the network. And all these things need to be in place for the actual benefit to be visible for a consumer. So unless you have a clear message to the consumer in terms of the use case that they can enable, the user is not going to recognize that they might need a home network. So all these things need to be in place.
I'll give maybe one other anecdote. It seemed like when we first started talking about email, maybe, I don't know if you remember CompuServe and all those guys, but we had in the 80s the year of the network, right, for the IT world, and it was like 10 years in a row. It's like, oh, this year it's going to happen. No, well, okay, next year it's going to happen. And it was about 10 years of that, but at the end of that decade, it was inconceivable to have a business that did not have these computers networked together. My sense is that the home is going through that same sort of thing. It's not going to happen all at once, but what really excites the consumer purchase is that they get some real tangible benefit right up front. So with an iPod, right, it's instant access to a whole lot of music because you had other kinds of players before, but you didn't have them with a hard drive inside. What distinguished the iPod was that they hit the ball out of the park when it came to the ease of use. So everybody could use it. And you know what? I like technology. I have a lot of fun with it, but I like things that are simple as well. Even though, yes, I do have a degree in electrical engineering, it's still much easier to get something to work. And I tell you what, I'm the IT guy in my house. I got 5 PCs, I got wireless, I got Ethernet, I got all that stuff. And I'm having a hell of a time keeping it running. So if we make it easier to understand, easier to set up, easier to use, easier to buy, then I think the users will come, right? But for right now, I think, we're still sort of approaching that hump to get over.
Do you know your hexadecimal key?
Yes, and I do know what a web key is, and it still confounds me. I still can't get it to work.
Okay, that's good.
I think, Ross, one thing to add there is that you touched on a great point, and I struggle with the word sharing. Just because I think when consumers think of sharing, it's a concept between 2 individuals.
Okay.
It's what they do over the internet with somebody else. I share pictures with grandma, I share pictures with somebody else. And I think the early stages of the industry have been really driven by sort of the technologists, and the marketing, sort of the terminology that's been brought to table is around sharing, right? It's hey, go ahead and share content in your home network. Go ahead and set up a centralized media library in your home, and these are all very awkward things that most consumers don't even conceive of, right? It's only when you finally a light bulb goes off and it's like, wow, I can go and buy this thing called an Audiotron or a Sonos or whatever, plug this thing in, and it's going to play music off of my computer. Oh, okay, great. Now you have a need to create this music library. Now you have a need to have content shared in your network, and that's the means to the end. And so I think it's really describing the endpoint in the use case scenario, as Peter touched on, that is really going to help make the shift there.
You mentioned the sharing over the internet, and of course, we've seen lots of attention on YouTube and other online media sites recently, and I wanted to ask, how important is this sort of sense of community to the discovery of new content, which is going to lead consumers to want to have access to it on multiple devices? Billy, maybe you could talk a bit about what you're seeing in the PureFlix community.
Yeah, I think it's a great point and a great question. I think community is critical to it. I think many of the things we're doing at PureFlix and have done and will continue to do is all about the community side of things. So if, again, our business being in movies, if you think about how social movies just naturally are. You're out at dinner with friends, you're out at a cocktail party, and inevitably the conversation at some point turns to movies or turns to an actor. And so being able to take that same social community experience that you're having in your offline everyday lives and be able to apply it in the online world does lead to discovery. It allows you to find out about new actors or new genres of films or new directors that you wouldn't otherwise have found out about. And typically, in real world scenarios, again, offline, you find those things out from your peers. You're at a dinner and somebody suggests, hey, have you seen this movie? No, and next thing you know, you see it. And so being able to have that same discovery process in a community is key. There's actually a column in today's USA Today that was talking about social networks and where social networks are headed. And rather than just social networks being, humans are social by nature, but they tend to be social about something. So whether it's your affiliation with a religion or your affiliation with, an education or a university, there's got to be some organizing principle there. It's certainly in our case, we think that it's about movies and film, and that's a core affinity group that people align themselves with.
So we've got new sources of media. We've got increasing capacity in these devices. It seems like it's a real challenge for companies used to building products that essentially stayed in the home for years, did one thing, played one kind of media. How are you guys coping with that? Is it putting new demands on chips in terms of the flexibility to accommodate codecs, or other media sources that we may not have foreseen at this point?
Well, the great news is that the constant evolution of the video business, particularly for the home, keeps us in business. Because as soon as this market matures, my competitors who have lower costs and lower overhead, who might be making chips out in Asia, will overrun me. But as long as there are new things happening, new codecs, new software to write, new ways of accessing this material, new ways to deal with it, we have a competitive advantage because we can do not only the chips, but the software and the whole integration together. So actually, it's a good thing. It's certainly a challenge, but it's one where we feel like we know how to address it.
Richard, in terms of the software that Mediabolic's developing, what are some of the things you're trying to anticipate coming down the pike, or is it is that even a futile effort and you're just trying to get things to market at this point?
I'd say that anticipating which direction technology will go is probably futile, although I would say that building in some sort of upgrade service is becoming key to everything we do. Several years ago when we built TiVos, they connect to a network every day and they in fact upgrade themselves, and most people don't notice, but they get new features. TiVo had a really great business model for that because they're collecting a service. If the box got smarter over time and there was a reason for the consumer to stay interested, it made the service more valuable. It is difficult when you have a product that doesn't necessarily have a service attached to justify making it smarter over time. Traditional CE manufacturers say if you want new features, go back to the store and get another one.
Yeah, that works for Peter.
Yeah, and so what we're looking for is a combination of new services associated with devices and new features to make those services more valuable and more rich. So for example, if you build a photo shoebox, does it also come with a connection to a photo printing site online so that when you see a photo you like, you hit print, you select an address, ship it to grandma, and it just goes, and then somebody who manufactured the box gets a cut of that print cost. There are things like that, that's an example, but there are a lot of things like that we look at. If you look at the Sonos, for example, probably the best digital audio player for the home built today, it's the equivalent of the iPod for the home. It has just recently upgraded itself to be associated with Rhapsody, and Rhapsody gets $10 a month of your money, but you get every song in Rhapsody's collection from the touch of your Sonos remote. If you don't think Sonos is getting a little cut of that, you're high like a kite. So my point is that as the technology changes, we look for ways to go back into the consumer's pocket. In other words, either the product stays the same, or if we're going to update it, we have to figure out some revenue to justify the update.
And Brett, does that sound like an attractive future direction for Network Magic, where today you're kind of focused on trying to get things to troubleshoot connections, although you do a little testing of the router to make sure everything's sort of up to date. In this brave new world, are you also looking to help consumers by making sure they have the most up-to-date firmware on their set-top box? Or
yeah, we are definitely, and that's one of the challenges that Network Magic tries to solve. And I should talk a little bit about some of the features real quick. As you install it on each PC in the home, Network Magic will go out and analyze the security context at various points in your home. So we're constantly making sure that not only is your router secure and you have wireless security turned on, you have the latest firmware, but also that if somebody, the kid in the upstairs bedroom suddenly turns off antivirus and is downloading stuff from BitTorrent, then you really ought to know about that. And so we provide sort of a network-wide view of all security aspects in your home, and I think that's sort of going to be a necessary thing for consumers, at least in the interim. It's a necessary facet, I think, of where the industry is at, as consumers in the interim are going to have to manage that. At some point, I really hope that home networking gets to the point it's kind of like the Romex wires in my house, and I just plug my toaster in and I put the toast in and it makes toast, right? Or I put the bread in and it makes toast, rather. I like double toasted toast. It's a British thing. It's very toasty. So I think we hope we get to that point, and certainly we're investing always in the topper end of the pyramid too, right? We have features such as remote access so that I can get access to my content where I'm away from home, such that I can use my desktop to very easily share with other people, across the internet with friends and family. But definitely what we see is that those leading edge features get a lot smaller adoption than the basics, because people are just stuck on the bottom rings of the Maslow's hierarchy. They're struggling to get it to work.
Any other comments regarding the service component? and supporting standards in these products?
I think as long as the networked home requires you to understand or even know that it's networked, there's going to be a barrier to market growth and product growth. You have to be able to just buy products and they work. And this is the hurdle that we're going through now. People have complete sets of CE products in their house. A lot of them, they just bought brand new stuff. There's been a lot of new technology releases in the last few years. So there needs to be an integration of new products which just work with the products that you may have already just spent quite a good price for. Flat screen TV is not exactly a discount item yet, although a DVD player is. So you might very easily buy a new DVD player for $99 and upgrade the $49 one you had, and it's a connected one, and it's got HDMI out, and it upscales all your existing DVDs, and it connects direct to the internet to download movies from Cinema Now, for example. That kind of usage and that kind of product design is what we need, so that someone doesn't have to have any IT knowledge or know about web keys or any of this sort of stuff. It can be enabled at the store. They just bring it home and use it, and that's where we need to be.
So, it kind of makes sense that we're seeing a bit of a trade-off between the pain, of trying to move media from one device to another today, because that's just where you happen to acquire it, and the pricing of having it all fed to you, the way cable has been doing for decades, but having a limited flexibility in terms of what you can do with the content once it's there. So, given that today, most consumers are using the second model, where they're just having the content, sent to them via some via proprietary service, such as cable. Maybe we should be challenging this notion that that I think a lot of us take for granted, that there is going to be a lot of demand for moving things around. If the service provider, as an IPTV provider, decides they want to differentiate their business by sending you music, by sending you, all kinds of different content, and you have a big hard drive at the end of that pipe, why do we need to move these things around?
I think it's good to know the sort of distinction of the trade-off between pain and gain. I don't think anybody is going to put a home network in place to move video content around just for that reason. I don't think they will. You know what they're going to do? If they surf the web enough, they're going to get broadband. And if they get broadband, and if they get another PC, they're going to put in a home network. And that might be all they do with it. But if they have a good experience with that, if it tends to work, then they could start thinking, well, maybe I'll try something else. And if they have a neighbor or a friend who's tried it and it worked, then okay, maybe they'll give it a shot. You have one chance, I think, with most consumers. If it works when it comes out of the box, then okay, you'll move forward. If it doesn't work, either you or your spouse will get so disgusted with it that you'll be set back a couple of years. So you could ask yourself, how's this going to migrate? And I think a lot of people are getting pretty interested in getting movies over the internet, right? So DivX tells me there's something like 50 million DivX movies out there. Obviously, you've heard about YouTube. It's another big deal. So you can see it's not just a fad, it's a trend. And you can see consumers wanting to do the uptick. So the interesting part for us is, okay, can we provide this in a way that people want? And I think it will happen. But if you expect it to happen all at once, you might be a little disappointed.
And, Richard, we were talking about your days at TiVo, which essentially built a living room PC that ran Linux, but inside looked a lot like a personal computer with a different kind of chip. So, what sort of, your perspective? We heard Brian Peckroth talk earlier about how these dedicated consumer electronics devices are going to beat out PCs for this kind of access. But it seems like an area that Intel, the Intel, AMD, and Microsoft are pushing real hard to get to, and clearly over time they've been very successful at driving down the cost of that functionality. So are you looking at something like Media Center as something that's sitting under your television, or something that's shooting media around the home?
I guess I really do strongly believe in the dedicated device concept because, frankly, if I'm recording a movie and I can't get enough horsepower to calculate my Excel spreadsheet and I'm at home working, I'm going to be a little peeved. If I am, the concept of the PC under the television, I think, is a broken concept. Now, obviously, a TiVo is a PC. Most set-tops, it's a computer. Most set-top boxes are computers at this point. Most of them have, a 200 megahertz or better chip inside them. In fact, most NAS drives at this point are computers.
HD DVD players.
Yeah, they are very powerful chips inside these from these guys and these guys and Philips also. I mean, they all have.
Not anymore.
Well, that's true.
Anymore.
NSP, excuse me. So all of them are very powerful devices, and where a computer becomes a dedicated device is a really kind of interesting line. I now see these routers, something that we used to think is a dumb blue box that we plug our Ethernet in, our DSL in, so we can share around computers. Now routers have hard drives and download all the things you tell it to look for on BitTorrent. So you no longer have the computer on, your router is doing all your illegal stealing for you. You can almost claim oblivion. I didn't know it was doing it. So it's, the line between a computer and a dedicated device is very blurry, and to go back to your, TiVos were dedicated, but they also became connected a long time ago. Not many people did it, not many people understood why, but now a great deal of them are. And the fact that cable companies and satellite companies are still building unconnected DVRs is ridiculous. But as usual, the private industry tends to push faster than the large utility companies. So.
Okay. Brian Hofstadter, you'd mentioned televisions, flat panel TVs becoming more commoditized, and certainly in our research tracking, we've seen dramatic price drops on both LCD and plasma this year, which are only going to continue in the coming year. So at what point do manufacturers start looking to you to say, hey, I want that communications functionality. Now is the time for me to differentiate by making my television or DVD player, reach out across the network and grab my photos, or do they say, look, it's too much of a hassle now. Maybe I just want to build like a memory card reader in that will, enable me to get some basic pictures off my digital camera pretty conveniently.
Well, I think your question goes more to the availability of services versus the need for connectivity. If you look at an HD TV and its connectivity capabilities, today it has all the connectivity for which there are services available, and also it has some extra connectivity for the different devices that are already selling in the home, like the memory card reader you mentioned, maybe USB for other devices, things like that. But if we talk about the services for a second, I think one of the things that IP-based, broadband-based communication in these devices is going to enable is the fact that you're paying for your cable and satellite and services like this to be on and available 24/7. But a lot of people aren't home watching them 24/7.
Right.
In fact, most people pay that monthly bill so that they can watch maybe one or two favorite shows and maybe a movie on the weekends. And by having connected devices like HD TVs and like DVD players, there will be alternative menu options for folks to have that say, I want to watch it when I want to watch it, and that's when I'm going to pay for it. So the video on demand, electronic video on demand service that was promised starts to have more of a chance of being real when there are a lot of device choices that are connected and allow you to have any service you want that week. This week, Cinema Now's got a special, I'll buy the movie from them. Next week, it's coming from Amazon. Okay, maybe I'll buy it from them. So that will enable some options that users who have different buying patterns might optimize the dollars they're spending on what's today a utility.
So that's really interesting content and service diversity question, whereas today, the digital music market, Microsoft tried to develop an ecosystem of multiple service and content providers and was not successful competing with Apple, which offered one source for it's purchased content, and well, unless you count eMusic, which offer non-DRM music. But what about will what you do you think what you say will be enough to overcome the simple, perhaps closed approach that they may bring into the market with this ITV device, which seems to be getting a lot of attention for a product category that's, as other people on the panel can attest, has really struggled, in the past few years, this notion of the digital media adapter. Now, certainly they're getting a lot of attention, but is this the product? Does this look like the product that will break things open?
I think Richard said it earlier. It may be that DMA is more of a feature of other devices and not a dedicated device that stands all by itself. But it also is important to understand that even a service like iTunes isn't really a dedicated, one source service. Those of us who dig a little deeper, probably yourself included, know that just about any musician can get an affiliate relationship with iTunes and sell their product. So Apple's carrying the burden of the branding and the marketing, but many people are empowered to sell through that channel.
So it's the diversity of the content and not the
and it's open access to a lot of providers. It might be through a single banner. But the fact that my garage band can sell their CDs or their music DVDs through that service, I'm going to tell all my friends, and that makes me look cool that they can get their stuff from iTunes. They can't get their stuff from me through Comcast. So it's a bit of a different model, having that IP delivery and that internet-based connectivity as opposed to a closed MSO system base.
But I think on that point, people want to push it out there in an open way. So to the point you just made, which I think is a good one, but if you look at how many garage bands are pushing their music out through the affiliate relationship with iTunes versus how many are doing it on MySpace. It's a push versus pull kind of question, and if people can get it out there in their own way and in their own environment and do all that, I think MySpace has shown that they're going to do it that way rather than through iTunes, or you can do similar things on Amazon in terms of independent filmmakers can get their own movies out through Amazon, but it's not a channel that any of us would think to go to get an independent film.
And there are a lot of organization issues around the content. I'm constantly frustrated by how difficult it is to find new indie music, in anywhere, just about iTunes or other services. So. Okay, just wanted to open it up a bit beyond the home and talk about other content consumption settings, the car. We talked a bit about the iPod, which of course is on the go. Do you see the home network evolving to, or how do you see the home network evolving to accommodate these other kinds of things? For the Bryans, are you looking at doing? Are customers asking for transcoding capabilities so that you can support these mobile devices, or bring it into the car the way you can easily do with a DVD today?
Well, we're getting a lot of that. In our design today, for instance, you can plug in a camcorder with a DV port and you can record your movies. You can even control the camcorder, fast forward and rewind. So people like that, right? It makes their job easier. We have USB now, so that if you want to take files off of your PC and put them on the little USB, into your home system, you can do that. So you could, gather all that audio content and put it places. If you want to take it off of that big old hard drive and put it onto the portable device, you can do that too. If you record something at a high quality and you want to actually shrink it down to fit on a DVD, because you don't want to make 2 or 3 DVDs, the chip can actually do that for you, right? It's called transcoding or transrating, depending on how you store it. So yeah, what you're seeing, I think, is the chip guys follow what we think the consumer will want 1 to 2 to 3 years away from now. And I'm seeing the integration of all these peripheral connections, the HDMI, the USB, all of these different things are getting built into the chips because we can imagine that a couple of years from now, this thing is really going to be huge.
And Peter, when your engineers come to you and say, look at all this gee whiz stuff we can do, what is your sort of marketing and product development people say in terms of what they think the retailers will accept in terms of the market? Do they say, this is an opportunity for us to extend our brand or to reach out to a more tech-savvy consumer, or is it more, along the lines of, look, this stuff is just too complicated, too out there, and we're going to experiment with some things, but we need to be a bit more judicious.
That's a lot of questions in one.
Sorry.
When it comes to that interface, I mean, really, my customer, of course, is a retailer. Then you're not only looking at whether that's a product that can be used by consumers, but also can you actually sell it. So the really competitive thing there is how much shelf space do I get in the most important season, which still is the fourth quarter of the year. And if I have 5 spaces for a big screen television at Best Buy, am I going to be the courageous one that takes one away and put something really new there? I mean, that's really a risk that you take.
But doesn't that help with your differentiation, or?
Well, it may help with your differentiation, but then if this, I rely on the sales force first to point that out. So there's a lot of there are a lot of things involved in that moment that we don't control. So you really need to get together with the retailer there and say, well, what is the scenario? How does this play out? And do we have people who can actually sell that? And well, then you have to make a leap of faith that is actually going to happen. Otherwise, you lose that sale for that entire SKU, and that is a big thing because I only have 5 SKUs.
Right, and I think that's a great point in terms of the reality of getting these kinds of products to market today, to open up the floor to questions. So any questions at this point? Yes?
Well, I want to go back to the support issue with the consumer and whether they will actually, at some juncture, use a home knock, and whether they will actually go to that extreme, or whether they'll just, the Geek Squad has to expand the business model, and it's not just about reacting to broken computers, but now the Geek Squad gets to put all these new systems together. I mean, that's the way I see it in short term. You guys agree, or what are your thoughts about that?
I've dealt a lot with that, of getting people to go behind their television where the cobwebs are and actually plug things in. And I'd say that 2 things are happening. One, you're right, technology is going a little faster than most people are able to keep up with, so there will always be a market for the Geek Squad, Johnny Truckroll, whoever comes and installs this thing. Which is why a lot of these technologies are being rolled out by cable companies and satellite companies 3 years after they really hit mainstream in the private sector, not mainstream, excuse me, became popular in the private sector. Because even though DVR looks really cool and you go to your friend's house and you play with theirs and you really want one, until someone else will come in and put it in for you, you're not going to buy it. By the same token, I also, as much as I really believe in the keep it simple, make, the iPod model is beautiful, make it really simple and customers will come. I also think iPods were really popular because they were cute and white and became a status symbol. But the fact is, consumers are getting smarter. And whereas it was a pretty good joke to say, I don't know what my 128-bit hexadecimal number is, or hexadecimal key is, a lot of us in this room do. Now, obviously, we're on the right side of the Sierras and the correct, so there is a vast wasteland between the Sierras and the Appalachians.
I think it's the left side, actually.
Depends on which way you're looking.
But I don't need to really pick on those people, but that is where it's really difficult to get people to understand why technology. People are not going to go buy something until either it fixes something that's broken, or it makes it so cool that they can't say no. We didn't sell a heck of a lot of TiVos until Oprah said it was the greatest thing she ever had. So that's honest to God. So
it all comes back to Oprah.
it really, if you don't get Oprah to back it up and put it in for you, install it for you,
And give it away to our audience.
and give it away to all your
Right.
Yeah, right.
That'll
So
help.
you get my point. You're right, but also customers do get smarter. We no longer have to learn how to crank our phone, but we do now have to know what a SSID is. So.
Well, one of the things that you see, Magnum's customers are sort of evolving a bit. The networking features that I talk about building into platforms, the kind of customer who wants to build a box like that and sell it has up to now been a PC manufacturer who would really like to be in the consumer space. So they already have thousands of people in Bangalore answering a telephone. So they're not that afraid of the kind of support load that a product like this is going to need, and they can charge enough because the people they're selling to think, okay, well that's cool. I think maybe I want that. Again, it comes back to pain versus gain. right? There are some people like LG, right? They took our chipset and put the PVR inside the TV. So they wanted one remote control. And they felt like, as cool as the TiVo is, wouldn't it be even cooler that you don't have to have two remote controls, you can just do it with one. And, you can integrate a lot of the user experience, so you can automate the recording of certain channels and so on, a lot like TiVo does, but they kind of moved that in. What you find is that there's a reason for integrations that are successful. Right? A clock radio is not just about having a clock and a radio. It's because maybe when you wake up, you want to listen to music. So it makes an improvement. Same would be true with putting a hard drive recording system into a TV. And eventually, I think people will wake up to the idea that a connected box has advantages over an unconnected box. And it's going to take time. It's going to take the grassroots. My parents probably won't see that. I gave them a web TV 10 years ago, and they thought that was very cool. One of the dozen or so that sold. So I guess I'm famous with them. But, if you get a benefit out of it, it may be worth the pain. If you don't see the benefit or it's not relevant, then, you're asking the wrong person.
The stock I'm up to would have been a better gift, but okay.
Before the
acquisition.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes.
To what extent do you think some of the up-and-coming wireless technologies, Corsair 211N, but say UWB, get rid of the ugly cables that I still have to plug into my nice TV? How is that going to advance home networking for consumers, the average Joe? Somebody that doesn't want to fish wires through their...
Certainly getting rid of the USB cables between cameras and viewing devices and PCs and sort of that thing is probably the driving issue behind UWB type solutions on CE products. But you're still going to need to see some other service be associated with the network, and the network to be easy to use if it's going to be more than just a cable replacement. I mean, we are right now putting UWB solutions into the digital cameras just to do what you said, but that's all it's going to do until someone adds a photo sharing service that is necessary to have that connectivity there. So it's not just one company that can control the entire ecosystem, and we all have to build to an ecosystem mentality, and that in itself is a change in the industry. Mostly what we see are mega companies who say we can do it all ourselves, or small companies who can only serve a little part of the solution up.
I think it's very important in that area not to oversell. I mean, we do have to realize that currently most home networks are barely capable of doing music. Doing standard definition video is probably quite a challenge, let alone doing HD. And so if we start selling these products and say they can do everything, your photos, your pictures, your music and everything, and then it doesn't work, then they get returned to the store, and then you may have lost a customer for at least a couple of years. There's a huge industry out there working on new standards. 802.11n, for example, is one, and then there are still variants and people experimenting with different antenna technologies, etc. Of course, ideally everything is wireless because you don't have any wires to run. Here in the US, at least, some households have wires in the first place, and in Europe, for example, practically no house has wires. There's a telephone plug somewhere, but that's in one place. There's no connection to other places, so you couldn't even utilize that. So it's important to not oversell, to make clear to consumers what they can expect of it, and I think that's very important.
I think what you're going to end up with is you're going to end up thinking, can we help manage the migration from one technology to another? I have wired and I have cordless phones. My wired phone gives me the best sound, without question. And guess what? There is no battery, so it's never dead when I pick it up. But the cordless phone is a huge amount of convenience. The same thing could be true with networking. You want speed, go to Cat6 wire and get 100 megabits or a gigabit. If you want convenience, you go to wireless. If you want, basically put it, not running any new wires, but you still like the idea of wire, you might choose either coax or Powerline. And they all have their advantages and disadvantages.
But the consumer wants it all.
Yeah, so they're free to buy it all, right? I think that the challenge is making it work, right? And as you say, we don't want to oversell, but we don't want to undersell either. There is a huge amount of practical benefits that you can get from this stuff. And, putting in a network without having to run wires is a huge deal.
Well, I think one of the things too that we haven't mentioned it at all in this panel, but it's really important to take note of, is the falling price of storage. Because by having very low cost memory and very low cost hard drives, you can have so-so network performance in your house, and that can be good enough for most people because they're not home all day waiting for the network to do something. So if you have a device that's a main connected device and you have some satellite devices in the bedrooms and things like that, you can be moving movies around and synchronizing things that you want to synchronize and actually utilizing your network while you're not there.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I'm surprised that we haven't seen more sort of sync and store, kinds of solutions. It seems like most companies have tried one approach or the other. Any other questions? Yes.
You talked about the ease of which we're moving the media around. I mean, I think what Fairfax is doing is pretty appealing to the mass market people, because you're going to get a DVD and plug it in any movie one of their players at home and watch the movie. I mean, to that point, most of this entertainment stuff could be spontaneous. Let's go watch a movie. Great, plug it in and see it. So the last thing a person wants to do is deal with, or have the rights to use this. Is it going to plug and fit? Is it going to turn on? And the audience is there in your little room, ready to see the show. So to what extent is the industry addressing permissibility and so forth, so that it's not even, the user may not even be aware, but they have purchased this material or rented this material or whatever, and you can see it without getting into any kind of security.
What can we do to simplify, that?
Well, I would certainly say that it's kind of like Garanimals. If you have the right logos on the front of the device, it might work. We're seeing, certainly with DLNA, if you have a DLNA sticker on the front, it's probably going to play at least Windows Media DRM files. If it has a Plays for Sure logo on it, it will definitely play those. If it has a DTCP/IP, connectivity, certainly in Asia we see a lot of other transcription mechanisms other than Windows and Apple. We also have to remember that this conversation has been largely based on U.S. consumption. In Asia, it is a far bigger market. Most people have fiber to their home, not slow DSL. They'd laugh at my 8 megabits. So it really depends on where in the world you're looking at it. But I would say that DRM is becoming better, but still an ugly beast. And the fact is, I can still order my DVD and rip it, or buy my CD and rip it, and it's a better solution than buying it from any Windows DRM site or Apple, because frankly, I don't have a pretty white player in my car. I have an old Ford. I like it. So it just, being able to play anywhere is really the goal, and DRM is a huge barrier to that, and it needs to be simpler.
I think what you'll see though is a partnering of devices to a specific provider, right? And the DRM thing's just hidden under the hood. Take Sonos as a great leader on this front, right? I bought a Sonos device 2 or 3 years ago, and I go home one day and I got an email from Sonos and like, hey, now it plays Rhapsody music. Like, hey, I have a Rhapsody subscription, great. I turn it on, it's already updated itself and it's good to go, and I look and oh look, there's Rhapsody music. I click the button and it comes out the speakers. So I there's all this DRM voodoo going on the hood, but I didn't have to know any of it, right? Sure, I can't go to iTunes and download stuff from iTunes, but that's not a problem for me because I look at what Sonos is giving me as a device, and I think that's going to be true for consumers in the video front too, right? Is that their device is going to play content from wherever the store is that it comes from, and it's going to do that really well, and the whole DRM thing is going to be under the hood. The question is, can one provider that's tied to the device provide, interesting enough content for me as a subscriber, right?
If you look at the industry, what you'll see is the DRM schemes in cable are pretty well advanced, right? You've got cable cards and you've got pay-per-view and all that, and they kind of work that out. If you look at the...
I dispute whether a cable card has worked out.
Well, it's coming anyway. At least they've got some notion that, okay, if you really want to have pay-per-view or whatever, you can get it, right? And most of those systems. In the PC world, whether it's iTunes or some of these others, it's starting to get pretty well worked out. They've got the ideas, they've got infrastructure to be able to build this. If you look at commercial DVD, they've pretty much got it figured out, right? You have CSS and Macrovision and other things on the DVDs, so it protects your content. What's not very well worked out is the rest of it for internet delivered content, particularly for retail consumer products. And I've been asking this question now for a couple of years. Every time I come to a gathering like this, do we have any agreement by the content guys and the sort of DRM guys? Have we picked what we can do? And so far, no. There's a lot of people talking about it. There's a whole track at this conference about that. But so far, I have been unable to locate the sort of definitive answer that says, okay, yes, content guys say go, DRM guys say go, and now the chip guys and the box guys can go build it and make money.
Well, one of the answers to that is that the systems you've been mentioning are all systems that are single service systems, so they have a single DRM to protect them. What we've done at Zoran is we've made variable DRM engines in the next generation chips, so as we go into Blu-ray and HD DVD and to the HD TVs that are coming, you'll have a number of resources available that the DRM folks understand, and they will then be able to read what is the needed DRM for this particular piece of content. And this is the whole point behind having an open delivery system rather than a closed delivery system. The closed delivery system is one company licensing the content for one use. The open delivery system is many companies licensing different content that you choose from, and they might all use different DRMs. So you start to have super chips like we were talking about earlier. It drives the prices up initially, but once the volume hits the right volume, this starts to be available technology in these products.
And speaking of closing, we are out of time. I would like to thank all the panelists for a great discussion. Thank you for your questions and attendance.